Several months ago now, I made a video reacting to some of Animen'z's most popular performances. And Animenz is a pianist and YouTuber who creates arrangements of anime music. However, in the comments to that video, there were quite a lot of people who were disappointed that I didn't react to certain arrangements that Animenz has made. So that is what I'm going to do in today's video. So let's get into it. So that already sounds impressive because he's got this kind of motif. And that motif kind of outlines like a C chord, and then a G chord, and then an F chord, before going back to a G chord. But then you get both a bass line and a melody that's introduced in the left hand. Which changes what these chords are. So that pattern that's in the right hand, it sounds like one thing, but then it's changed by the chords that go underneath it. I love when that happens in music because it really plays with your expectation. You're hearing something, but then you change the bass note and it completely changes the landscape. Super fascinating. I'm already loving this. So you've kind of got like an A minor, E minor, F, G7, which takes you to C, and then you get this really great E dominant 7th chord. So nice. I know that I always talk about the chords that are being used, but honestly, the chords are the thing that give a piece so much flavor and character, and they're also the thing that give and take away expectation. So for a C chord, for example, you're kind of expecting it to maybe go to a G chord with a B in the bass again, but getting a C chord going to an E7, because it's something that you're not expecting, it just sounds so pleasing. And similar to the last video that I made on Animenz, he's kind of outlining the chords in the same way in the left hand. So with an A minor chord, for example, which is the notes A, C, and E, he's playing the A and the E, and then another A, followed by C, E, A. So he's playing the same notes as just playing a standard A minor chord, but he's spreading it out over the piano to add a lot more thicker texture. That's super interesting. So it's like he's changed key. I'd be interested to know if that happens in the original piece of music or whether that is a stylistic choice by Animenz. I know for a fact a lot of these kind of more interesting chords that have like extensions and interesting notes in them, I know that they definitely will be a stylistic choice, and he's so good at voicing these chords to make them sound really longing. That's interesting. That's like a Hanon exercise in the left hand where he's going. It's kind of weird though that it's only with 3 fingers. Yeah, so once again, this is a similar technique that were in the last video as well, where he plays arpeggios, but he adds notes into the chord. So an arpeggio is where you play a standard chord, like a C, E, and G would make a C major chord, and then you spread it out over the piano. So he plays standard arpeggios, but he adds interesting notes into those arpeggios, which makes it sound really fast and slick, because obviously there's a lot of notes to fit in as you go up and down. I love that, where he slides using a semitone to the note. Because once again, when you get like a G major chord, and you want to go to an A minor chord, it's a consecutive chord. It's like the next chord in the scale. But if you use the G sharp in between, it has like what I would describe as an eyebrow moment, where you're kind of going before you resolve onto the A minor. It's really interesting. He's very good with his left hand, because playing that where you're playing like octaves and then jumping to a chord very accurately is very, very difficult. And when you are playing a performance and doing it in one take like this, adding sections in where you are at risk of playing wrong notes, it's a very bold decision. So he obviously knows he has a very strong left hand, so he can write this kind of thing into pieces that he's going to have to do in one take. That's very nice. That's like an A harmonic minor scale. That was very classical and very Chopin-esque, where you've got these running lines in the right hand. And once again, it sounds impressive by itself, just playing those runs. But underneath that, the chords that are being used is once again using that half step up in the chords to lead your ear. So you're kind of getting like a C major scale, for example, followed by like an A major scale, because you've got an A chord in the left hand, which takes you to D minor. And all of these scales in the right hand are corresponding to the chords that he's using underneath. And I think for the layman that isn't a musician and listening to this piece of music, they're going to be super impressed by those runs and things. But there's so much underlying theory that he's using in order to write these scales and chords that go together so well in order to lead your ear through the piece of music. That's really interesting as well, because in the left hand he's using a pattern where he's playing kind of basic chords, and he's going the lowest note, the highest note, the middle note, the highest note. And this is actually a classical technique called the Alberti bass, and that's used in loads of classical pieces of music, but the most notable one is Mozart's C major sonata. So once again, you can see that he's a very, very well-trained pianist. And unlike many musicians who write arrangements of pieces of music, you can tell he's very much classical first, and then he's applying his passion for anime music on top. about that chord. So there's two things here that I think are just so effective. One is returning back to the theme that happened at the beginning, and there's some familiarity in that. So once you've gone on this big epic journey where he's playing all these flash arpeggios and scales, coming back to the simplicity of this. This is why I always suggest when people are arranging music or writing their own music, is you want to start with something very, very simple, and then expand on it as the piece of music goes on, and when you return to that idea by the end, there's something so effective and meaningful about it, because it's almost like you've started at home and you've kind of set the scene, and then you've gone on this epic journey and you've come back, and there's some warmth in returning home. And the second thing that happens is, once again, he sets up that pattern with the C major chord, but then he keeps the right motif going while changing that chord to, I think it's an A major 7 chord, which adds so much depth and warmth to the quality of sound. It really hits me in the feels. Yeah, so super interesting. So he's got this kind of tremolo going on in the bass here. And because he's changing the chords that are over the top of that, this acts as something called a pedal note. And a pedal note is where you hold a note underneath moving chords, and it really adds tension. That sounded like I was about to play Reach for the Stars by S Club 7. But yeah, as I was saying, when you add a pedal note like that, where you hold a note while the chords are moving, it adds a lot of tension, so that when you finally resolve it, it feels super relieving and like you finally arrived somewhere. I said this in the last video as well, but this writing is really kind of like a musical, and it really goes against the thing that I hate most about pop music, which is the lack of willingness to experiment. With pop music specifically, it often uses one scale, and it stays within that scale and stays very safe throughout the entire song. But with musicals, classical music, film music, and these type of arrangements, there's a lot more experimenting and moving to different keys and borrowing chords from different scales, which really play with your expectation. And it means you've got a much wider palette of sounds you can use to really tug on people's emotions. And you've always got the security of that nice motif to come back to. I mean, what an incredible piece and incredibly well written. And it's in the key of C major, so anyone that's learning the piano and starts with C major thinking C major is a limited scale you can use, this piece was predominantly in C major. So you can see how just using the white keys can actually get you quite a long way. I hope that comes back. He's using a very expensive piano, but it has got such a nice crisp sound. And you can tell that the action of the keys is really nicely placed so that he doesn't have to press too hard to get the key to sound. That is super helpful when you're doing those kind of arpeggio runs because your hands can just glide over the keys. Once again, I said this in the last video as well, that I can never remember these melodies. If I was to try and reproduce that melody right now, I would have no idea. But I could tell you the chords: D, E, F sharp minor, and then B major, which is super interesting. Because in the key of D major, you don't have a B major chord, so once again, you get that kind of surprising note. Once again, he's using almost that exact same pattern in the left hand where he's kind of playing the outer notes of the chord and then kind of the full chord at the top. It means that you're getting to use the lower part of the piano, but also kind of the mid-range of the piano, and then he's filling out the texture in the right hand by playing the chords and the melody. So he's kind of using most of the piano, which adds to that really big texture that he has. I think he might be spreading the melody across both hands. Pretty amazing that you can get that to sound so even with so much stuff going on and him having to jump around like that. I love that right hand pattern he's got going on as well. It's something like... I mean, it's making me think. I do react to a lot of pianists on my channel, and there are definitely some that are more equipped than others. You get some pianists that know basic chords and are able to play like a type of arpeggio on the piano, and then they use that in everything that they write, which is great because it still makes something that sounds really good. But when you compare it to pianists like Animenz, who very clearly has a very in-depth understanding of music, not only that, but he has clearly also spent the hours and hours in a practice room playing the piano, studying scales, arpeggios, chords, and clearly practiced a lot of classical music. I think it clearly shows in his playing and arranging that he really knows what he's doing. It's really interesting as well because there's quite a few pentatonic scales that are used in this, which is kind of symptomatic of Japanese, Asian kind of music. Another incredible performance. It's very hard for me watching these to try and explain what's happening in my head as he's playing it, because I know that I could very quickly descend into unintelligible music waffle that no one understands. But all I really have to say is that I have an incredible amount of respect for Animenz and his piano writing, and I think he is an incredible pianist. If you want to see my initial reaction to Animenz and some of his other performances, then head on through, and I will see you there.